Today, we're going to list the top 5 cars for under £25,000. Now, this is going to be from sports cars to what I would view as supercars. Let me know in the comments if you think they're a sports or supercar. So starting off, we have the Aston Martin V8 Vantage. This car is epic. If you ever wanted to look like James Bond for a budget, this is the car. So what do you get with that? Well, you can either get the 4.3 or the 4.7 litre V8. Obviously, the one that I would have is apparently the 4.3 because you've got more chance of getting a manual in that specification. The best thing about this car is definitely the looks. It's one of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen. It's got elegance and it's timeless. Personally, I think this car's got to be in grey or black. You've got to go and live your James Bond lifestyle, and this is the car to do it. Following the pop culture references, the next one is to unleash your inner Iron Man, and that has to be the Gen 1 Audi R8. This car is incredible. Now, a word for the wise, make sure you buy the gated manual. The reason for that is because when they launched this, the Gen 1 is actually a single clutch automatic, so it's not as good as what you would see now in the modern R8s being the double clutch. It is a beautiful car. It's really aging well. And I think that pop culture reference, I don't think you'd ever lose a penny on this car, especially if you had that gated manual, a full service history, and a pretty top tier spec. The next one is a personal favourite for me. I bought this car when I was 21. It was a dream for me, and that was the 997 911. Now, you could get a Carrera or a Carrera S, and if you want to save a bit of money, you could get yourself a Cabriolet. These go for significantly less. Major thing to look for is IMS or bore scoring. These are issues with the 911. They're very well known. Even if you do have these problems, there are third parties out there and specialists that are able to fix these problems. So they're worth knowing. And most of these issues start showing around the 60,000 miles on a car. So depending on what you're looking for, it might make more sense to buy a high mileage car with a rebuild or to buy a much lower mileage car. This car will do everything. One thing that I will say is try and get a 2005 because road tax is cheaper. A 2006 and 7, again, then gets more expensive just because of the regulations that changed. Again, this kind of goes down the same route as the Audi R8. It makes more sense to buy yourself a manual in this car. The automatic variant is actually a Tiptronic in this car. This gearbox is pretty bulletproof. It's been in the cars for maybe 20 odd years, but then obviously if you can get into a Gen 2 and spend that little bit more money, you can then get a PDK, which again is a pretty bulletproof gearbox. It's one of the best driving cars. Some could say a little bit too good. I prefer the manual because you get a lot more feeling and enjoyment out of it, and to be honest, I had a Tiptronic and it was pretty fantastic anyway. The next one is just straight up cool, but actually, I don't know if you'll get one for 25 grand anymore, and that's the Nissan GTR. These cars have held their value incredibly. I think it's because obviously they've got almost cult-like status, they're cool, and they're also something that can be heavily modified. I think you would not do wrong again by buying one of these cars. It's a pretty cool car, and remember, this is not financial advice. You could lose your hat on one, I don't think you will, but incredible, incredible cars. Next up is a car you might need a mortgage for, and it's not for the purchase price, it's the parts. This is the Bentley Continental. I think this is a wicked car for the money. You're giving footballer vibes. Yeah, very cool car, but it may cost you a fortune. These cars are effortless, elegant, classy, and quick, to be fair. The only issue with them is the parts costs. Although technically they're only VW under the surface, all the parts are expensive and they're known to have major issues. That could come from the suspension right through then to the engine and drivetrain. And one thing that I didn't know was an issue was actually the water gutters on them. A friend of mine had one of these. The water gutters failed, and what it caused was the water to end up ingressing into the car. And this can actually do some serious damage to ECUs and a few other elements that are actually kept under the seats. So that's one thing that's worth looking for. Like any of these cars, I would always recommend to get someone to actually inspect the car for you. You can do this with Porsche by actually ringing them up and booking it in for an 111-point check. But obviously you have RAC and a few other third-party and specialists that offer this service. It's always worth doing because you can save a lot of money on the front end by buying the car, but also on the back end in your ownership. Now let me know, do you agree with my top 5 pickings? Things I did think were honourable mentions were the Maserati Gran Turismo or Ghibli, because they're pretty cool for the money. Additionally, you've then got something like the Alfa Romeo Giulia. You wouldn't get into a Quadrifoglio, but I think it's a really cool car for the money. So let me know in the comments, what do you think of my options? I know some of them might stick just outside 25 grand, but I think if you wait and bide your time, you might find one just in your price range. So thanks for watching, guys. Please subscribe to the channel and follow the journey. Today was a little bit different. I'd really love to hear what you think of this kind of video. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.